The canals of England and Wales were originally designed and built for commercial use, and by the beginning of the 19th century, the country was covered by a network of narrow canals linking commercial centres. That is, until the railways came along. Nowadays, the canals are used for pleasure cruising. Whether you've just bought, hired or borrowed a narrowboat, it's a good idea to know precisely what to expect before you can begin enjoying your holiday. Narrowboats come in all shapes and sizes, usually ranging from 30 to 70 foot in length, but they share common features. Of course, most importantly, there is the engine. Before you set out, make sure you know where the oil and fuel caps are and check that you have enough for the journey. Find out from whom you are hiring, buying or borrowing the boat, what facilities are available on board and how they work. Again, before you set out, make sure the water tank holds enough water to last the journey. You should be able to acquire gas bottles on the canal. Once you have made all your checks, you can start up, cast off and make way. Before starting up, check that the gear lever is in neutral. The forward, neutral and reverse. An accelerator, and there is usually a stop button to switch the engine off. Set the revs at about halfway before starting up. Not all narrowboats have these sort of controls, so make sure you find out what each lever and button does before you set out. Once the engine is running, send someone ashore to help with casting off. Bring in the gangplank if you put one out, and get the person on the bank to untie the mooring lines and to push the bow towards the middle of the canal. Remember, boats drift, so don't push too hard or you may find yourself on the other bank. You may not be able to push from the shore and the boat may be too far from the bank for you to jump the gap. In that case, get someone on the boat to use the barge pole to push you out. Now all you need to do is shift the boat into forward gear and you're underway. Your dress will probably depend upon the weather, and it is usually a good idea to take warm clothing, waterproofs and some grippy footwear. Narrowboating is supposed to be slow and relaxing, so don't put the engine into full and plough your way up the canal. You should not really be doing more than about 3 miles an hour, which when you think about it is almost walking pace, if not slower. You should be able to judge a suitable speed by looking at your wash. Ideally, it should not be braking, as this will cause suction at the banks and erodes them away. So if you are creating a braking wash, slow down. The general rule of the road on canals and rivers is to keep to the right, so that when you pass a boat coming from the opposite direction, you can safely pass without any trouble. This is known as passing port to port, port being the left-hand side of the boat. Other rules of the road include moving slowly and steering wide of fishermen and other moored boats so as not to disturb them. Remember, you are not the only people on the canal. Sounding your horn when approaching blind bends so other vessels know to keep to the right when moving round the bend, but be careful not to frighten your crew.
Robin, did you get round the corner all on your own or did Barty have to help you?
I can't hear you! He's got the engine gun, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's really strange, isn't it?
Give way to any craft you are overtaking. You should overtake on the port side. You'll probably find that the first problem you come across is steering. Steering a narrowboat is entirely different from driving a car. For a start, there is no steering wheel, just a tiller which controls the rudder. The method to steering is quite simple, but it takes some time to master. Putting the tiller over to the right does not mean that the boat turns right. In fact, it turns left. This may seem confusing at first, but if you find you are having problems, remember that the boat has a pivot point, usually situated halfway along its length. So when it's the bow, you need is just little movements of the helm to keep you under control and heading in the right direction. The best thing you can do if you're at the helm is relax, and the feel for steering will come.
Do you have any words to say on that last
Everybody blames it on me.
When talked about, narrowboating often provokes the comment that it is boring. How can anyone entertain themselves for whole days at a time doing less than walking pace along a canal? Well, for a start, narrowboating isn't supposed to be a high-pace activity. In fact, the pace of the boat slows you down, and you'll find that doing next to nothing for days on end is very relaxing. For those who like relaxing, there's nothing I can think of better than sitting at the bow and watching the world go by. You could watch the wildlife, the people, could read, sunbathe, eat.
Smile!
Locks are seen as the most fun part of a cruising holiday, as you'll have to operate them, in most cases, yourselves. They were the original invention of Leonardo da Vinci, designed to lift or lower craft to different levels of water. If you get as far as a lock, you should make sure you have a windlass with which to operate it. Windlasses look like this. Most canals have a specific size windlass for use on that particular canal, and they are used to raise and lower locking gear, and sometimes used to open and close lifting and swing bridges. This is the Widcombe flight of locks, situated at Bath on the western end of the Kennant and Avon Canal. We set a group of students loose on them to see how they would handle descending and then ascending a couple of locks. The first thing you should do is to moor and firstly take a look at what you're up against.
You've got to fill it up first, haven't you?
Then you should allocate jobs to people and decide who's doing what. Then you can proceed, hopefully without any trouble. When locking down, this is the procedure to follow. First, check that the bottom paddles are shut. In this case, there are indicators at the lock gates to tell you whether they are up or down. At this point, the bottom gate should also be shut, but don't worry if they won't close tight, as the water will hold them shut when you fill the lock.
Does everybody have their own lock key?
Yeah.
These are the ratchet gears and are found on many canal locks. You need to lift the pin before you raise or lower them. Of course, if the lock is already full, you needn't do this. Once the lock is full, you can open the gates and steer the boat in. Being careful to leave a gap between the back of the boat and the top gates so as to avoid the sill. The sill is the protruding base of the upper level and is usually found halfway down the lock. If you are in a wide lock, it is usually necessary to hold the boat against the side by putting out lines around the available bollards. Don't tie them on because you need to let out a certain amount of rope as you fall. Then lower the top gearing.
Can you bring that window?
The tendency with this type of gearing is to lift the pin and let the paddle drop, but you must not, as it may ruin the gearing altogether, and it is dangerous to people nearby because the windlass may fly off and hit someone. You must wind them down. Then all you need to do is to raise the bottom paddles and descend. There's the sill. Once you reach the bottom level, the gates will loosen and you should be able to open them. If not, get some help. When the boat is out of the lock, you should leave the lock as you found it, or as requested by the lock keeper, or by signs posted around the locks. And obviously for locking up, you just do the same process but backwards. Enter the lock, shut the bottom gates and paddles, put out ropes if necessary. It's easiest to throw underarm. Get some help if you need it. Open the top paddles, filling the lock. Open the top gates and leave the lock as you found it. It may take you some time to master locking up and down, but you will probably find that whether you do it well or badly, it still provides great entertainment. Lifting and swing bridges are often seen as more trouble than they are worth, but when you do come across one, good procedure ensures that your trip goes smoothly. First, drop someone off to open the bridge. It is in fact a good idea to have at least 2 people operating a swing bridge, as they can sometimes be particularly stiff. Then maneuver the boat into a position where you can wait for the bridge to be opened. If you're on the bridge, read any instructions carefully. You may need a windlass. Once you are ready to open the bridge, don't push too hard or too fast, as the bridge may bounce back. If you are trying to operate a particularly stiff bridge, then it is easiest to push the bridge as far from its pivot point as possible. Wait for the boat to go through, then close it. And, as with locks, leave it secured as you found it.
Oh, we'll have to stop it.
Then all you need to do is pick up your crew and continue on your way. Remember that it is best to go very slowly when picking up your crew. It's not easy to jump onto a moving boat.
That was close.
Tunnels are not such a common feature of canals, but when you do encounter one, make sure you have a spotlight to see where you're going. A strong torch will do, and keep to the right to avoid craft coming in the opposite direction. Once you have learnt the ropes, narrowboating becomes a most relaxing and enjoyable leisure activity.
I think it's very relaxing. I can't think there's anything more relaxing.